administration has so far been very successful in keeping allies unified in response to Russian aggression. I think the last few days, maybe the last week, has been anomalous. Can you tell me why, and why we should be reassured that this was a blip on the screen and that we're going to move forward in a more unified fashion, especially as I assume wrangling has to happen all the time. The fact that it happened in public was, not insurmountable, just a little bit of a stubbing of our toe, and we got through it. But I want to make sure that this is not the new normal and that we're going to go back to what I thought was pretty extraordinary coordination and unity.
Thank you, Senator. The history of NATO, as Undersecretary Nuland can attest, is one of bringing the alliance together because there is always a common purpose, but there are different ideas about how to get to that common purpose. And we are really grateful and admiring of the work of European allies over the last year in bringing different capabilities, different niches of military capabilities, financing, support to Ukraine. And so it is a work in progress always. The specifics of the issue of how to move forward on armor, there was a lot of success built up over the previous weeks on APCs, on infantry fighting vehicles, on all kinds of armored vehicles. There was intensive discussions about the right mix to get to Ukraine for the fight right away, as well as the long term. And the urgency of the fight right now, combined with at the same time thinking about what we needed to provide Ukraine for a longer term capability, did kind of emerge in public. But underneath, we've been working with allies and partners all along, and we knew that we would get to a resolution and a solution that provides Ukraine with the capability that it needs.
Thank you. Secretary Nuland, I want to talk to you about applying Russia lessons to China, especially as it relates to the economic sanctions regime. Couple of thoughts. First, if you could just elucidate briefly the differences, right? I think we had extraordinary success and quickly in unifying not just allies, but almost the entire planet around a sanctions regime and economic isolation. That's a heck of a lot harder to do if we're talking about China and an invasion of Taiwan. That's number one. So please talk about the differences. Number two is, can you reassure me that there is an interagency process now on developing a sanctions regime? And I get the balance that you have to strike between signaling to China that there will be consequences, but also, tactically speaking, not telling them exactly what they might be facing so that they can spend 5 years figuring out a plan to evade those sanctions. So can you talk to me about where we are in that process?
Thanks, Senator. In this setting, I'm going to say the following, and I look forward to following up in another setting if you'd like. Just as China is intensely learning the lessons of Putin's failure and the way the world responded, so are we thinking about applying the lessons to any future contingencies in Taiwan. And frankly, we're speaking very clearly to the Chinese about it, but we're also speaking to the whole world about it. Were there to be a conflict, as you know, in the Taiwan Straits, 50% of global commerce would be disrupted. So if we've had food insecurity as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we'd have massive economic global dislocation, and China would be directly responsible. So that's a talking point that we're using not just with China, but with other allies. We're also talking about the need to have, with every partner, whether it's an ally or whether it is a hedging state or whether it is a state with deep relations with China, about the concern about having over-reliance, whether it's in their supply chains, whether it's in their strategic relationships, whether in debt on China, and creating the resiliency, right?
But I do want to, and you don't, maybe this is not appropriate for an open session, but we're having a discussion about how to configure a sanctions bill or send the right signals. And I'd like for us to get it right and not polarize this issue about are you tough on China or not, and make sure that we don't telegraph things that we don't want to telegraph. I think that they should be clear that there will be severe consequences. I'm not sure that they should know exactly what they are, because they may be capable of evading those consequences if we tell them 5 years in advance. Thank you.
I think we'd welcome the chance in another setting for those conversations.
Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each of you for being here and